when's the last time you thought about how you think? Do you think independently? Would you consider yourself to be fair-minded? Would you say you've cultivated intellectual humility? Do you tend to clarify the meanings of words or phrases before you interpret? And do you normally consider sources or even analyze your own perspectives? These are all marks of what we call critical thinking. In his book, Developing Critical Thinkers, Steve Brookfield talks about the journey of a thought, and also along with that, 4 distinctives of critical thinkers. Let's consider what he has to say. He begins by saying that any thought that you or I have begins with information. That might be information that we receive directly or indirectly. We experience an event, or we hear about it, we read about it. What normally happens is this information comes into our minds through one or more of the 5 senses. We hear it, we see it, we smell it, we taste it, we feel it. But what happens, according to Brookfield, is once that thought enters into our mind, it immediately takes a quick detour south into what is called our subconscious mind. And this acts like a filter. This filter consists of our assumptions, our presuppositions, our biases, our prejudices, our beliefs, our values, our convictions. All of those comprise this filter through which this thought form passes. And after it has taken that quick detour south, as it were, it then emerges again into either a word or an action or some reinforced thought form. Now, the critical thinker is someone who recognizes that this process happens. The non-critical thinker is not in touch with this process, doesn't stop to think about the filter that he or she possesses. So let's consider what the critical thinker does in light of knowing that this phenomenon occurs. This leads us to discuss the 4 distinctives of critical thinking. And the first of these is that the critical thinker identifies and challenges his or her own assumptions. What are the things that you assume to be true? They might not necessarily be true. Take, for example, the male chauvinist who is on his way to work in the morning. A car pulls out in front of him on the highway. His immediate assumption is, what is her name? The assumption is all women drivers are fill in the blank. And assumptions often are generalizations like that. All women, all men, all Republicans, all Democrats, all Germans, all Arabs, all adolescents, fill in the blank, whatever it may be. Whereas the critical thinker can identify and challenge to see whether or not that assumption is in this case, or any case, true. Identify and challenge your assumptions. The second is similar, and that is to think contextually. Now, what is context? Context is the setting or the surroundings in which an event occurs or a word is spoken, for example. It might be a context of history, an era of time in which something is written or said. It might be a cultural context. It might be a literary context in which you look at the words before and after that message and who is the one speaking it and to whom is that message being addressed. I heard a story of one of my colleagues recently who said that a student was texted during class. And obviously, a student was very upset when he got this text message. And so during the break, he went to him and he said, "What's up? You look quite upset." And the student said, "Well, yeah, I just got this text from my mom, and it says, 'Grandma just died, LOL.'" And he said, how can she be so callous to say that? And of course, the instructor, being of my generation, said, "Relax. In our day, LOL meant lots of love. So what your mom is saying grandma just passed away. I'm sending you lots of love. And so this student failed to identify the context of his mom's own personality, the event that just occurred, the situation, and of course the generation in which his mom was speaking. So context can be everything. Don't only look at words or events, but look at them in context. Context helps us to interpret. The third distinctive is to consider all sides of an issue. I'm hoping that many of you have seen the incredible play or movie, 12 Angry Men. It's a story about a jury that makes a decision after hearing all the evidence on whether or not a young man should be convicted of murder. At the outset, 11 vote guilty and only one suspends judgment. And that person is not content until every piece of evidence is viewed from all sides. And even the witnesses are viewed from all different perspectives. Once that takes place, all 12 jurors now conclude there was a reasonable doubt and that young man was not convicted. The point is, no one of us has a corner on all truth. We must explore and consider all sides before making a decision, whether it's a political speech or a statement that we hear by the water cooler or whatever the case may be. So we're looking at all sides of a given argument or of a given issue before making a decision. And that leads to our final distinctive, and that is to suspend judgment. And that is to say that we wait until we have enough evidence in hand to make a decision. Do you have enough information now about that issue to decide upon that issue? I'm still telling my students that when asked about my view of gun control, my feet are still firmly planted in midair. I don't know yet where I stand on that. I see good arguments on the side of gun control, and I see good evidence to support the opposite view as well. So I have not yet landed, and I hopefully someday will land. But even when I do, I will practice reflective skepticism on my own view to say I may yet have more information come to me of which I am not now currently aware, and I might change my mind. Part of the practice of intellectual humility is saying, I cannot fix my view in concrete. There may be a day when I will see this issue differently, and as a result, I will allow my mind to change. I often tell my own kids that the older I get, the less dogmatic I become. Critical thinkers keep an open mind. Open-mindedness is part of clarity of thought and critical analysis. So in conclusion, would you call yourself a critical thinker? Would you align with someone who practices these basic distinctives in clarity of thought?